It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, October 23rd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high-quality content that still cannot believe the Flyers scored 3 shorthanded goals in one game.
Yeah, it's a lot. I don't remember the last time I've seen that.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. We'll get into that overtime loss, plus name our Nemesis of the week, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks once again for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here, as always, with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. And as a show, we are at Locked On Flyers pretty much everywhere: Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter, all that. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get the $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. So you can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, man, that was, I don't even know what to say is a one-word takeaway from that game versus Dallas over the weekend. Topsy-turvy is a good one. We started out, though, with the not-so-great news that Marc Staal is injured. I believe he's going to be out like at least 6 to 8 weeks, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so that is obviously going to have a big effect on the Flyers' blue line. We're going to dive into that in the next segment. But talking about this game specifically, we were correct that Sam Ersson would check in net. Dallas chose to put in their backup goaltender in Scott Wedgwood as well. So it was a battle of the backup goalies. And I'm still like in awe and shock over this 3 shorthanded goals. You look at the Dallas power play tracker, it's just like a bloodbath. It's awful. And the Flyers even got another shot on goal in that third penalty kill where they scored 2 in the one penalty kill there.
Yeah, I think they're catching some teams by surprise because they're willing to take a few chances to try and score. They also know that they're not scoring in other areas, so they're willing to take those chances. And teams, I think, are kind of like going with that robotic, hey, let's just set things up on the power play, figuring that the other team's just going to sort of play the box and do it kind of boring, and the Flyers aren't doing it that way. So I think teams that haven't really done a ton of video work are getting, surprised early on by that.
Right. And I think that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on as the season progresses, because we know teams like learn and things even out and settle out.
Yeah.
And we saw something similar early last season. So, we just want to make sure that we're not setting expectations too high.
I believe the penalty kill's better than last year.
Yeah.
I could say that.
Yeah.
To what degree? Yeah, we don't know yet.
Yeah, absolutely. But in the meantime, it's a lot of fun to watch. I also think, looking at this game versus the game against Edmonton, I know the score was, completely different, but you see the way Edmonton kind of collapsed after they got down. And Dallas, we know, is a team that's not going to do that, right?
Yeah, they're not mentally fragile like Edmonton is. And again, this is even with Wedgwood in net. So just imagine if Ottinger's in net, how they would feel about getting a comeback. So just that team has the right mental approach.
Exactly. And so we knew they weren't going to go away,
right.
Even after blowing that first, that initial 2-0 lead. Like you knew they were going to come back. And sure enough, they went ahead and then led 4-2. And it was just like the Flyers PK effort that got them back into it. But I think overall, looking at these 2 games, it was really good to see the Flyers well matched against 2 top teams.
Yeah, I mean, right now they're matching up good against everybody. I think the early season conditioning is paying off compared to some other teams, but it's early and we've seen what's happened before. And now all of a sudden the injury bug's starting to come in with older players or players who have an injury history. Staal played every game last year, so it's amazing that all of a sudden he gets here and now this happens. So that's weird. But we'll see. We'll see. But right now they're matching, as much talent as they can to play hard against these teams.
Yeah. I think one of the big factors here is Travis Konecny has come out real strong out of the gate, which is not something he did last year. It took him a little while to get into it, but I am so thrilled that he is scoring and his tenacity is just fully on display. It was on display from jump in the first game, and I feel like he has been well-deserved of the 5 goals he has in 5 games so far, 7 points total. And that's a real solid starting for him.
No doubt. I mean, there's no question right now he's their best player. Preseason, we picked him as the Flyers' best player no matter what. Even if he got traded, we figured he still might lead in some categories. And coming out this hot kind of makes me think that either way, that's probably going to be true.
Yeah, I do think so. And I love that he is contributing at 5-on-5. He's contributing on the penalty kill. The power play is something we got to talk about still, just because, they only had 1 attempt. So there wasn't a ton of chances to get back on the horse, so to speak, with this. And it was a much stronger PK, I think, on average that we've seen from them. Mm-hmm. They got 3 shots on goal, I believe, in it, and 1 more missed shot. So the effort is there. It's just the finish is what's lacking, right?
Yeah, it's the finish. I also still think it's a mindset too. I think it's a combination.
Yeah, I do think it's still something they need to work on.
It's 5.6%. You can't change that.
Right. I think that the other thing that is mostly good, but it really highlights what they can work on, is that they're still getting the shots on goal. Again, against 2 top teams in a row, they're getting those volume of shots on goal. And, considering that who they've been facing, they're getting a decent amount of quality shots. But in this game against Dallas, I especially love the shot distribution. If you look at it, there was no deep red mark. The shots were coming from everywhere and really challenging Dallas's defense and really challenging Wedgwood.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the volume of shots is good. I mean, that's a positive that they've been able to carry over for 3 games now at least. So that part's positive. The only thing is the guys they're expecting to score goals, other than Konecny, really aren't scoring goals. They're getting it from other areas, and that's good. But some of these other guys have to really start scoring goals for them if they want to be able to keep this up.
Yeah, I think that is fair. I do think they have to get more of a wide range of people scoring goals. And Sean Walker has scored 2 this season, shorthanded, but you can't depend on Scott Walker to score shorties every single game.
No, you can't.
No, but I think that, they just need to get slightly better quality chances more consistently. And you're right, get more people involved in the scoring. But I do love the shot distribution. I think that it's really, it's just really important to attempt shots from all around the ice so that teams don't know what to expect when you come in. And it's harder to scout. Yeah, absolutely. As far as other things they could work on, obviously, I think, 4-on-4 is something that they have to work on defensively. I think they're doing really good 5-on-5 in terms of keeping that structure. And, they make mistakes where they do, but overall, the defensive structure has been good 5-on-5. But 4-on-4, I think it needs some work.
Yeah, I think the overall speed factor of the guys on 4-on-4 is probably what hurts them. And so that's, that's where I think they're getting beat a little on that. I'm not sure that's going to be all that fixable, especially if you keep – I mean, look, I can't just sit on the sidelines and say it's a good idea to keep scratching Morgan Frost. So if you wanted to put speed in the lineup, he could help on that situation, but he's not there. So,
Yeah, I do think that's an important factor, is that I do think Morgan Frost would thrive at 4-on-4.
He would.
Now, it's hard to plan for that because, obviously 4-on-4 is something that happens randomly, but at
Sure,
the
but it
same
is another
time,
set. Like you have these things,
yeah,
set on paper, like what they are and what you're going to do and who gets deployed. So that way you're ready for it. But they're not using their best personnel. That's what it really boils down to.
right. And I think one other thing that's obviously something we've talked about in the past is, the face-offs on set plays and stuff, because that's what led to the overtime goal
Yeah.
for Dallas, and they lost a couple of face-offs at the end of their power play, which took away from their time to have some additional chances on that as well. And so that's something I think we want to keep an eye on as
I
well.
mean, they have Sean Couturier back. I mean, you would think that would plug that up a bit. I mean, he certainly added.
It does, but
It
not
does,
enough.
but not enough.
Yeah, he's just one guy. So I think, there's other players out there.
Most teams only go to one guy in those situations. When you really look at it, sometimes they go to two, but mostly they go to one.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question as to what you do with that moving forward. But we've got a lot more to talk about with this game, and more specifically about the blue line, and we are going to do that coming up next.
You know that feeling when Travis Konecny scores a hat trick? If you want to get that feeling and win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. To have a chance at winning big, you need to play daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Fans also can play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, and college football on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. With elite players like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Austin Matthews, plus new guys like Connor Bedard, all you need to do is make more or less picks on stats for these stars. Choose from stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can get up to 100 times payouts on Sleeper, so start paying attention and get your picks right so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details.
All right. On tomorrow's show, we will obviously be previewing that late night game against the Vegas Golden Knights. Plus, we'll have Phantoms Tuesday, busy 3-game weekend for them to talk about. For the Flyers blue line, we talked about the Marc Staal injury, and I feel like things just got a little more interesting. And there are really tough choices to make here. And I want to sort of add to that the Nick Seeler fight and getting kicked out of the game versus Dallas, because that was really kind of what led to the 4-on-4. And I just feel like it was unnecessary, and that it really had a negative impact on the game. I don't think it helped the Flyers in any way. And I just want to include that in this conversation about does this change anything in terms of Nick Seeler and his usage? And, what do we do with Staal out for the next little while?
Well, like Scott Hartnell was okay with Nick Seeler doing what he did because he was sticking up for a teammate, right? But my feeling, and I think your feeling, is there's a time and place for that. And that maybe wasn't the time and place. Yes, you could at least go at the guy and say something, do something, but you didn't have to have a full-fledged fight. I think that's probably where you're getting at, and I'm with you. Because, again, you can't get, especially now with Staal out, you can't lose Nick Seeler for that amount of time. So I do think it's an issue. I do think they had two choices. One is send Sandstrom down. I mean, just sitting him as a backup, not playing him, still doesn't help him. Tampa's waiting everybody out. Like, the Flyers at this point are not going to win this. They're not going to get any assets for Sandstrom. So if they indeed just want him there for just in case, it's a bad move, especially now. And when Risto comes back, you have to do something. So at this point, I would send him down and I would have another call up, because I think we saw John wasn't happy with the defense, rightly so. There's going to be mistakes with kids, and I don't think he loves that. And so there's not any better solutions in the sense that when you call somebody up, it's most likely going to be a guy with not a lot of experience. But, John could call Victor Mete too, and it wouldn't shock me. So that's something where I think there's discussions going on probably about that.
Yeah, and I think the timing about Rasmus Ristolainen is going to be really important in all of this. To your point about the roster spots, because if he comes back, then there's no opportunity to call somebody else up if Felix Sandstrom is still around. Right.
And why you should do the call up now, send Sandstrom down now, because Risto's probably close if he's skating. Yep. And how much longer can you wait on this? It's just not helping the team with that roster spot issue. I feel bad for Sandstrom. He's in the rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I think so. But, especially, with Sealer getting booted, they were down to 5D against like a tremendously talented Dallas Stars offense. And, you look at Sean Walker being out there in that 3-on-3 overtime, which I thought it was a mistake that there were 2 forwards and a defenseman out there for that face-off. But that's a coaching choice. That has nothing to do with the
coaching choice.
It has nothing to do with the play of the players out there. No. I thought that was definitely a mistake. But I do think that overall, this Flyers D is playing better, but now there's a little bit in flux with this injury and Risto, and we don't know. I just feel like now there's there's a lot more pressure on Travis Sanheim than there was before. And B, Andre and Zamula are going to be under the microscope a little bit more as well.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't mind that. I don't mind if all of them get 10, 15 games. But that's not what John wants to do. You could see that. So the thing about the D is it is a little better, but they can't really lock down leads. I mean, you wouldn't feel that comfortable right now with a 2-0 lead, like you said, with this defense. So I think that's where they really have to improve, is to be able to do that. Everybody, says, hey, don't sit on a lead or whatever, but the NHL sits on leads. Let's face it. Teams will do that, especially late in games. And right now, you don't feel like you could do that with this team.
No, and that is in spite of Travis Sanheim playing better.
And he is playing better, no question.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 4 assists on the season. That's on pace with the top defenseman in the league. He's being more aggressive offensively. And I really think he's honestly recovering from mistakes better than he has in the past.
So far.
I don't think it's getting to him the way it did last year.
But Cam York's not doing a whole lot. And that's a whole other thing. He's playing 23 minutes. And I'm not saying he's playing badly. I'm just saying he's not playing anywhere near his potential. You could just see that.
Yeah, I am a little worried about his penalty situation as well. I think he needs to clean up a little bit and figure out how and more strategically, because I know sometimes as a defenseman you have to take a penalty, but he needs to get a little smarter about it.
Well, the thing about it is, so we've been told for 2 years he's getting physically stronger, but again, there does become a point where if you're going to be a top pairing guy in this league, especially facing a big, strong team like Dallas, that you're going to have to be able to be a little more physical, and he's not there yet. And I don't know when he'll be there for that. So what usually happens is you end up having to take penalties for it. Or like you said, maybe you should figure it out differently with your game, but that's hard to do in season now.
Yeah, I do think that that's something he needs to think about, and maybe the coaches need to work with him on how, on some takeaways without taking penalties, or just getting somebody tripped up without actually tripping them.
Right.
I think that's kind of something he does need to work on. I think the other big question that we're looking at right now is the usage of Andre and Zamula, because it was an either or until the Staal injury, and then both of them are in the game. And now I think that there's going to be a question as to what the right pairings are if they both have to be out there until potentially Risto is back, right?
Yeah, unless they call up someone like Victor Mete, which again would not shock me in the next few days if that happens, because he's a veteran with NHL experience.
Well, we'll talk about that on Phantoms Tuesday in terms of the defenseman down there and who we would think makes sense for that. So tune in tomorrow for our take on that question. But I do think that,
and I'm not saying that that's what I endorse. Definitely tune in for that. I'm just thinking in the lines of the coaching staff.
Right. And what they would do in this situation. No, I totally get it. I just think that there could be some pairing blender action happening over the next week or so. Again, I think, if Risto comes back in, like where does he fit here?
Yeah, I mean, if Risto comes back, I guess right now you have to start him on the third pairing and work his way up because, the other pairings for the most part are working for you right now, or at least the first one is. You could throw him in on the second, but right now you don't want to put it all in the blender either.
Right. Because I think that, you try to build consistency here and get people working together in a more smooth way. And that will help them on the 4-on-4 as well.
It will.
So I think that all of this is, I think, ultimately a good thing. I think there's just going to be a few bumps in the road to get there.
Well, I think, there's a lot of pluses because things are happening that we'd want them to happen. But if these guys weren't injured, and it wouldn't be happening at this rate. So that's, I'm okay with it because, again, I don't have expectations for them being this big winning team. But I don't know what the coaching staff's expectations are as far as early in the season. I think they're trying to compete. So the fact that they are, that's what sort of, may put a wrench in it a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be really fun to watch all of this moving forward. We've got a big week ahead and thus our nemesis of the week. And we will get to that coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. So if you are newer to our program, each and every Monday, we look at the week that is ahead of us and say, what is the thing that is worrying us or bothering us the most in the world of the Flyers or the NHL overall, or sometimes life, as Russ likes to throw in there more often than not. Valid, totally valid. Last week, we talked about getting back on the horse at home against high-scoring teams. I think they did that. I think they did. They did that real well. So my nemesis for this week is keeping it going. We saw kind of what happened last season when things fell off a little bit. They face Vegas next, and they absolutely have to keep their game elevated. But I think confidence is at a high point here. I think they can do it. I absolutely do. But up against Vegas, which is undefeated, I believe, as of now, as of this recording. And so they're going to have to work really hard. And we are going to also have to work really hard at staying awake for said game because it starts at 11 p.m.
Yeah, we're going to have to chat about that. That's my nemesis. That game could run until 3 in the morning, like 2 in the morning, almost 3 by the time you're done with things. It's just ridiculous that they're running a game at 11 o'clock. It should never happen. Honestly.
Yeah, even though it's not 11 in Vegas where the game is taking place, we understand that, but that's still an 8 o'clock start.
Yeah.
In Pacific time. And that just seems unreasonable for the opposing team.
It is.
For like the broadcast.
For the sake of TV, because it's ESPN, ESPN Plus. But again, I'm sure they'll get some good numbers in Vegas, but as far as nationwide, they're not going to get great numbers for this game. No way.
I mean, it is. I understand why it is the way it is. It's part of this, all the teams are playing that night. But I feel like all the teams playing in one day is something you should do on a weekend where you can start with a matinee.
Yes.
And not have the last game start
Like that
at
Hockey Day in
11
America
p.m.
team was always on the weekends.
Yeah, I do think that. And part of me is like, am I being selfish here? Because it's, we're the ones that have to stay up late to watch
We're not
this
the only
game.
ones. Like even just people who have a job and have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. Are you really staying up to the end of that game? There's no way.
No, I think it's the, I don't know. I've been
East
sort of,
Coast, obviously.
yeah, and it's so hard because I've been looking forward to this day because I think it's fun what the NHL is doing with having all the teams play. But then I've sort of been dreading the Flyers aspect of it because of having to stay up.
Yeah, no, it's bad. I mean, I just think there's a better way to do it. And if you want to end it on the West Coast, don't end it at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, at this point, it's like, why not have a midnight game? Like what's, I mean, people who are at the game are still going to be leaving that game after 11 or at 11, after 11, and they still have to work too. So even on the West Coast, it's not ideal.
No, but for the Flyers, I do think it's going to be a huge game for them. And I want to see them carry through a lot of the things we talked about from the last two games into this one. Of course, later in the week, we're going to see the Minnesota Wild and the Anaheim Ducks. And the Wild are kind of a mixed bag this season so far. So I think like going from an elite team like Vegas to the Minnesota Wild is also going to be a challenge for them in terms of level of play and, matching up different styles and things like that. And then you have the Ducks, who are a younger team with some young superstars in it that are looking to prove themselves as well. And so I think these are three very different games this week that they're going to have to prepare for.
Yeah, no question. I think it'll all be interesting. I think what we hear, whatever the Flyers are going to do for these next 2 days as team building out in Vegas, I think could be interesting. Are they going to go to the Sphere? Are they all going to go to the Sphere and check that out?
Oh, man.
I mean, who knows?
That should be fun for them. I'm looking forward to the video that is produced for that. In the meantime, I do want to mention the Gritty 5K that was held Saturday morning over at the Wells Fargo Center and FDR Park. I participated. If you are watching on YouTube, you may recognize the t-shirt from the event, and we got a little medal as well. It looks like a hot dog. Gritty was throwing hot dogs at people to eat. It was just such a fun event. I went with my mom.
And FDR Park's nice. I've played softball there many years. It's a nice park.
Yeah, really gorgeous with a great pond and everything. And the atmosphere was great. The weather held up. It drizzled for like 5 minutes and that was it. And it's just such a great event that they do. It's great for families, lots of kids in strollers there. They have activities for the kids all along the route that were really cool. And just want to recommend that if you ever have a chance to go. And again, if you've got kids and want to bring them, great time. And, I just enjoyed doing the walk with my mom and as we were celebrating her birthday. So, good for runners and walkers alike. And again, just a good time. So thanks to Gritty and the Flyers for making it a fun day. That will do it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening or watching. We're going to preview that game against Vegas tomorrow, plus talk about those Phantoms, like I mentioned. We will have a mailbag segment this week, so please send in your questions via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.